Sadhu says, today is the last day for evening Dhamma talk, which he is continuously trying to explain. We have already completed 6 weeks retreat and 6 weeks Dhamma talk. This is the last date. In previous days, sometimes he has given the discourse for 1 hour, sometimes more than that. Today, because of the last day, so he might have to complete the discourse. It might take longer time. Whether you could listen to the discourse 1.5 hours or not. Then what about whole night discourse? Shadow says he has tried to explain how the yogis could gain progress in their practice, to have proper insight, understanding. Occasionally he tried to explain whenever there was appropriate time to explain the progress of insight, to have some understanding about the progress of insight. He had made to play the tape, to see through meditators' own experiences what kind of knowledge they have obtained through the practice. And yesterday also Sayadaw tried to explain about the progress of insight, and he described how one can gain the knowledge of arising and passing away through their diligent effort, possessing the mental powers in their practice. And Sayadaw also mentioned the benefit of the knowledge of arising and passing away. And in such stage, yogis could feel peace, bliss and happiness which couldn't be compared with any types of worldly pleasures. And today also Sayadaw might deal same process of progress of insight about the knowledge of arising and passing away. When the yogis could reach in that knowledge, it is sure that if they make further progress in their experience and in their endeavor, and they have continuous effort, continuous observing power and continuous concentration, right aiming, precise timing in their practice, they would gain further progress and they will obtain the middle knowledges as well as the ending knowledges. When they reach to the ending knowledge, they might experience the path and fruition knowledge, in which they will really obtain the real peace and happiness according to the path and fruition knowledges. And Sayadaw also assured that those yogis who obtain the knowledge of arising and passing away, if they strive very hard to obtain the first path and fruition knowledge in their life, it would be possible for them, because it has mentioned in the text also, those yogis who could obtain the knowledge of arising and passing away, it is certain that they could reach to the path and fruition knowledge in this very life if their practice is constant and continuous and energetic.
Dhamma, Dhamma, Nibbana Dhamma. Young Atom Popo, Atom Champion, Young Song Tire Popo, I look like the room, young and young, yes. Every young Atom Mega Dhamma. Niku Song Popo, a Song Popo, they are yapping Popo. A bear and Mijaya. Tandia Malay Majaya. Somebody, the social cargo. Saint Ania, you every Kyoto Yama. Dari Aya. Some Somebody, who is social cargo, hitting being Bali, media, I could get him a follower.
Sayadaw says, if the yogis really reach to the first path and fruition knowledge, at that time they can realize the cessation of physical and mental phenomena. In the end, when there won't be any kind of physical and mental processes in their practice, they ceases totally. That understanding, when they experience through their exercise, then it could be said that they are reaching to the first part and fruition knowledge, in which they are realizing the Nibbana. When one reaches to the first part and fruition knowledge and realize Nibbana, that Dhamma is there to protect them, to look after them, to help them, and to give safety to them, and to uplift them from suffering worlds, especially from the lower worlds, or even you can say from the nether worlds. So the yogis could get rid of the lower world sufferings, and that benefit could be gained when one reaches to the first part and fruition knowledge as the stream winning. And there are several things to explain how that part and fruition knowledge Dhamma is there to protect, is there to look after us. We need to ask the question, or we might have such question. Sayadaw says he will try to explain how that part and fruition knowledge gives us proper protection and looks after to us to free from this suffering world, as well as totally from the nether world.
Dharanaja Panidasa Apayari Nipataka Kilisa Wujansana Jangamima Pyatari Dhamma Edi Dhamma Saunyin Saumajin Kuni Saushap Kagwe Hitting Beijing Suradim Pavaru,
which are the main sources and main causes to arise various kinds of sufferings in this world. The Dhamma is there to totally destroy them and to totally uproot them, not to arise again, to give any kind of difficulties to the beings. So in that way the first part and fruition Dhamma, who holds it, they would be free from all those defilements through which one can put or thrown into the nether worlds and other types of the worldly sufferings. From those sufferings, that Dhamma protects those people, and they will, well helped by the Dhamma, not to have any kind of sufferings. It is obvious in the world, whenever you have lot of enemies, you cannot have peace and happiness in your life. You cannot live in safety, without fear, without danger. All the time there will be expectation to arise any moment, all sorts of difficulties if you have enemies in this world. In the same way, until in your mind there will be the impurities as your great enemies, you couldn't have any kind of pleasure, any kind of bliss, any kind of happiness, any kind of peace in your life. But when you hold the Dhamma as the first stream winning, at the time you totally destroy the power of the inner enemies, and you would be free from those enemies, because of which you are all the time in trouble in this world as well as hereafter. that Dhamma is there to make you free from such danger. That is the meaning of Dhamma as the holder of the people who hold the Dhamma.
So Javasu, Guru Drimtaniya Adhuru, Six Jabuga Asaholi, Juna Baichadi Kaitama. Any Baichadi the Yuna the Avoma, Pokutatu, and Gadu Jami Masa. Swelani came on. The Gado was able to let she, Pokutatu, Swell, she had a tiki for her. The tiki came. Yuna Baichadi never did a king. King is a pier king of Hopo, changing the king, changing the king of Hopo. The Yama the sister with Adoro. Yuna Jojo Seponi was the one forever. Area is the same, 2 people. 2 people are Kajaro. They show favor to Lord and would win and mitigate Savoy. And I never told you, said that you a chip of deal and a king. I never changing. Maybe any young chitty a kaitama. Taking a music is a name in him, a jet that you are making here. Very young, the same say, I don't go a Kajara, wasn't a yanni, in the interview. Now, so Nina neighbor with other but many of Yamoki, he got up at Mecca. She and the bar, a chain may pay a teaching and music is our very good is a chain catching. Very pupuma, just in the pupuma, now they did a young shit. You know, Mayuna, he never had a season, you know, Puputatu as well. Young Joseph only seen it all. You want to hear the king or you see the dear Pupua. But a matter, she not talking about going, you see the dear Kazaro, she and all the poet or you want to hear it all. The other than I another one. Don't know whatever you want to hear in the seal. You don't know what you got in the year. You know, a pay judge in it, Emina Yungin, Dawada Moha, Mana, Etamasi, associated with the other. But it's just him. Let it go. At 20 years, do Zoe who appears seen at the home with Asulava. Kera go there. Some near the cover. Some days are somewhat like Kumida, Tissue, social. God will be the meeting be like that.
Sayadaw says, let us try to get our own experiential examples. We are all the time practicing moment after moment using the Satipatthana way of insight practice. Whatever object arises in our noting, or in your noting you are trying to get that object immediately when the object is present there. Gradually, according to the power of your exercise and the effort and the observing power and the concentration power, you are enabled to hold all those objects clearly, and you understand this is the physical phenomena and this is the mental phenomena. When you clearly understand that two phenomenal aspects clearly, in which there is no any person, no any being, no any self, no any soul, no any individual, no any man or no any woman, they are free from all these conceptual aspects, and you are realizing truly the ultimate realities in each and every noting. Although the noting gives you the understanding that there are only phenomenal aspects as physical and mental phenomena, momentarily, but that momentary understanding which you have at that time sufficient enough to weaken your wrong views and wrong ideas and wrong thoughts. Momentarily you are cleared out from those wrong thoughts, wrong views, and when you reach to the second stage of insight understanding and you see clearly through your own experience the cause and effect process of each and every object, whatever you are noting at that time, and that understanding gives you another clear vision that now you don't have any confusion about the Dhamma, and when you don't have confusion about the Dhamma, at that time you couldn't have any doubt about the teacher who taught the Dhamma, and you couldn't have any doubt about the disciples who practiced themselves according to the guidance of the teacher, and they reach to that stage because you yourself are there now, so therefore you understand they also realizing same thing which we are realizing now. So in that way there were people, there were disciples of the teacher who had already or totally eradicated all the defilements, and they had really clear view in their understanding. That kind of realization, when they arise in your practice, knowing the cause and effect process and having clarity about the cause and effect process, no doubt is there. So in that way, momentarily, you are free from such doubting defilements, doubting impurities. In the beginning you have these two types of strong defilements keeping away momentarily, and that understanding gets more and more clarity when you reach to the further knowledges. And in the end, or eventually when you reach to the first part knowledge as the stream winning, at that time the first part knowledge is there to totally remove all those doubts and all those wrong thoughts which were weakening through the previous experienced knowledges. So at that time they couldn't have any more after obtaining the first part and fruition knowledge. And these defilements are very strong enough to put you in all sorts of dangers and all sorts of difficulties. When you were really free from those defilements, then you couldn't get such suffering result through which you could be put into the nether world. And at the same time there are rough type of another defilements which are easy to arise before, but when you reach to the such first part knowledge, at that time you couldn't have another type of those rough type of defilements also, such as there couldn't be strong type of greed, there couldn't be strong type of hatred, there couldn't be strong type of delusion, there couldn't be strong type of envy, jealousy, pride. These defilements also totally weakened, but not totally eradicated. The two defilements are totally eradicated. And though another defilements which have strong power and easily put you into the nether world and give lot of troubles to you, that power totally eradicated because of the first part fruition knowledge, part knowledge which you obtain through your own practice. And when you reach to the first part knowledge, at that time the 5 precepts become stable in your life. You never break the 5 precepts. Whatever condition there may arise, even you are ready to give up your life to protect the 5 precepts. That kind of powerful ability, mental stability will be there when you reach to the first part knowledge. And that is how the Dhamma is there to protect you. Therefore, the Dhamma gives the meaning. Dhamma holds the people who hold them, or who hold the Dhamma. And when the Dhamma holds them, at that time they are well protected, they are well looked after, and they are well given the safety, and they are uplifted from lower grading life to high grading existence.
အဲ့ဒီလိုကရှင်းပြခဲ့တဲ့ကြောက်ဖွယ်ရကောင်းတဲ့ကိလေသာတွေကိုသောတာပတ္တိမေကအပြတ်ပေါ်လေချိန်ပြည့်ဖြစ်စည်းပြလိုက်တဲ့အခါမှာအပယ်မကျပြီးတော့ဝိသင်းရမှာလည်းပဲကြာရှည်စွာမနေရတော့တဲ့ဖြင့်အပယ်မကျအောက်တန်းမကျရအောင်ဝိသင်းရမှာလည်းပဲမကြာရအောင်ဆောင်ထားရရောက်တယ်လို့ဒီလိုဆိုတယ်လေအဲ့ဒါကိုပဲဓမ္မလို့ခေါ်တယ်
So therefore Sayadaw says, when you obtained and you deserve the first part knowledge, at that time you never get to the nether world, which are really suffering world, and even some stages of the world spheres in which you could get lot of troubles, and that first part knowledge is there to eradicate that type of power. So therefore the Dhamma is there to uphold you, and the Dhamma gets the meaning that it holds you.
အဲ့ဒါမှာအပယ်မကျရအောင်ဆိုတဲ့စကားပါတော့ပါတယ်အပယ်ဆိုတာအပါယပါဠိရပါယဆိုတာအပအာအယဒီလိုပုံတစ်ခုပေါင်းစပ်ပြီးတော့ပါယလို့ဖြစ်နေတယ်အဲ့ဒီပုံတစ်ခုတွေကအယဆိုတာကဒီချမ်းသာနဲ့ချမ်းသာနဲ့နိဗ္ဗာန်ချမ်းသာ၃မျိုးပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒီချမ်းသာ၃မျိုးရဲ့ဖြစ်ပေါ်ခြင်းအကြောင်းပါဠိလိုအယလို့ခေါ်တယ်အဲ့ဒီချမ်းသာ၃မျိုးဖြစ်ပေါ်ခြင်းအကြောင်းကတော့ကုသိုလ်တွေပါပဲပြည့်ကင်းအကျိုးရတဲ့ကုသိုလ်တရားတွေပေါ့လေအဲ့ဒါတွေကိုပြောပါလားအဲ့ဒီလိုကုသိုလ်မျိုးမှကျင်းတဲ့နေရာအဲ့ဒီကုသိုလ်မျိုးကိုပြုတ်ွက်များမရနိုင်တဲ့အကုသိုလ်ကြီးများတဲ့နေရာလို့ဒီလိုဆိုလိုပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါကိုပါဠိလိုအပါယလို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်
In this statement, Sayadaw says, you are getting rid of lower world and nether world. And that nether world or lower world is called in Pali apaya. Apaya is the combined word. Two words are kept together, apa and aya. There are three types of happinesses in our life. Either we could have happiness in the human world, or we could have happiness in the divine world, or celestial world, or we can have happiness when we obtain or we reach to the Nibbanic stage. These are the three types of happinesses, and these three types of happinesses couldn't be gained with unwholesomenesses. To gain these three types of happinesses, we need to have lot of wholesome activities to get the happy result of happiness. And the causes to have those happinesses is called aya, through which you can gain those three types of happinesses: human worldly happiness, divine worldly happiness, and Nibbanic happiness. And the causes of those happinesses is called aya. There are some worlds in which you cannot earn such kind of causes to gain those three types of happinesses, and you are lack of those happinesses, and you are lacking to do such act through which you could get the result to possess those three types of happinesses. And aya apa means you are away from those activities through which you can get three types of happinesses. In such world is called apaya, where there is no many chances to earn wholesome deeds, to accumulate purity.
ကျုပ်ကတော့အကုသိုလ်တွေကိုသာများများပြုနိုင်ရာဌာနဒီလိုပဲမှတ်ပါဘူး
So Sayadaw says, if you want to know in brief, then just think where you could do lot of unwholesomenesses. That world is called apaya.
ဒီလိုတိရစ္ဆာန်ဘဝမျိုးပဲရှိပေါ့တိရစ္ဆာန်ဆိုတာလူလိုအတိညာရှိကြတာမရှိရှာကြဘူးတိရစ္ဆာန်ကောင်လေးတွေအဲဒီကောင်လေးတွေကိုကောင်ကြီးတွေကအနိုင်ကျင့်တယ်အဲဒီနိုင်ကျင့်တဲ့ကောင်ကြီးတွေလည်းပဲသူ့နိုင်တဲ့ကောင်ပေါ်လာတာပဲဒီကောင်လေးတွေကောင်ဟာလောဘဒေါသတွေအမှန်အားကြီးတာပဲဝန်တိုမှုတွေမနာလိုမှုတွေအဲအားကြီးတာဒီလိုသိစ္စာလောကဆိုတာချင်းချင်းတက်ဖြတ်ညှင်းကျဲပြီးတော့စံသာစီကင်းတယ်ဘုရားပဲဒီလိုဘုရားမျိုးဟာလူတွေလိုကုသိုလ်ကောင်းဒါနကုသိုလ်ကောင်းပြုနေရဒါနလည်းမဟုတ်ဘူးကိုချင်းဒီလာလည်းပဲသူတို့မှမရှိဘူးအခုလိုစိတ်ဓာတ်ပုံမျိုးတိမှတိုးနေတဲ့အစိမ့်မြင့်တဲ့အိဋ္ဌံဘာဝနာတရားမျိုးဆိုမဉ္ဇဉ်ပူညာနဲ့နိဗ္ဗာန်မျက်မှောက်ပြုပြီးတော့ဆန္ဒကြည့်နေတဲ့ဟာမျိုးဆိုဝိတာအဲဒီလိုကုသိုလ်ကောင်းမှုတွေမပြုနိုင်ရင်ဌာနဆိုတာအမှန်ကြောက်ဆက်ပေါ့အလုံးအစင်တန်းနေတဲ့ဘဝပေါ့အဲဒီလိုစင်တန်းနေတဲ့ဘဝနေပြီးတော့စင်တန်းနေတဲ့ဘဝမကြရအောင်ပေါ့သောတပတိမေကစောင့်မလိုက်တာပါပဲပြီးတော့ဆောင်ရင်းဆောင်မခြင်းကုညီစောင့်ရှောက်ကာကွယ်ပြည့်စုံပြီးခြင်းဆိုတာအဲဒီလိုဘဝဇုံမျိုးမှာဖြစ်စီနိုင်တဲ့ကိလေသာတတ္တိတွေကိုအပြတ်ရှင်းပြလိုက်တဲ့ဘောပါယန္တုတွေအပြတ်ရှင်းပြလိုက်တဲ့ဘောပါယန္တုတွေကျင်းသွားတဲ့ဆန်းပါလေးပေါ့အားရှိပါတယ်ဒါဆိုလို့ပါတယ်
Sayadaw says, let us try to see very closely in our existence. Nearest lower world existence we can see as the animals. small animals are killed by the bigger animals, stronger animals, and those animals also killed by another stronger animals. So in that way, in their world, the surviving of fittest theory is well provided. Who are fitting with strength, they are trying to put down other beings. If we try to see the nature of those beings, they couldn't have such kind of understanding which human beings have. They don't have any kind of wisdom, although they might have some kind of knowledge, but that knowledge couldn't be compared with the wisdom. And whenever something arises in their life, they are overpowered with all sorts of impurities. All the time they are developing greed. All the time they are developing hatred. All the time in their life, envy, jealousy. All sorts of these defilements are overpowering to them most of the time. And they don't know how to perform the generous act. And they don't know how to observe the precept. And they don't know what they shouldn't do and what they should do. All the time they just having their selfish desires to fulfill their own cravings and lusts. That type of unwholesome state of minds are overpowering to them. There is no any chance to do any kind of wholesome acts. As the human beings could do various practices as the wholesome acts, even the yogis here who are trying to obtain various understandings about their mind and mental states through the practice of satipatthana, could you apply to the animal beings to do the satipatthana practice? They never could do the satipatthana practice as you can do. Even they don't know how to give something to others. Whenever something put in front of them as food, they just want to take themselves only. They never share with other beings, especially your pets. Before they are playing with others, but when food will be near to them, they never give any chance to any other beings. So in that way, all the time there are all sorts of unwholesome activities in their lives. Therefore they couldn't get rid of suffering when they are really overwhelmed by those impurities. And they don't have any chance also to do any kind of wholesome deeds. So therefore the lower beings are really dreadful beings, as well as their life also really dreadful one. And when they're born in that world, it is difficult to have good reward again for them because of their activities overridden by the defilements and impurities. The Sadhu says, that's why the Buddha described lower world is the suffering world. And having rebirth in suffering world is really dangerous one. So as a human being, if they don't want to get rebirth in such lower world, they need to obtain such understanding and realization through which they can totally remove and uproot and destroy the powerful enemies because of which they could reach that lower world. When you reach to the first part, knowledge, you are really free from those dangerous enemies which can put you into that lower world. In that way, Sadhu says, the first part, knowledge is there to hold up, to protect you, holding you strongly to have the better life and better existence. In that way, the Dhamma is there to clear out the enemies from your existence and to protect you, to look after you, and to give.
3 မျိုးနဲ့ထုတ်ပြတော်မူပါတယ်။အဲဒီ3မျိုးကတော့အစာစားမယ်၊တိအစာစားမယ်၊နှစ်အိပ်မယ်။နောက်သူတို့ဘုံမချင်းချင်းပဲထုတ်ပြီးဝဲမယ်။ဒါပဲသူတို့လုပ်တာ။ဒီလိုပဲရှိတာ။ခွေးတို့လိုမြင်းတို့လိုတချို့စင်တို့လိုပေါ့ဒီဆက်တတ်တော်တွေကတော့လူနဲ့နီးစပ်တော့လူမှုရားလေးပြီးပြီးတော့နည်းနည်းပြစ်စာရှိတာတော့ဒါတော့ရှိပါတယ်။ဒါပေမဲ့လို့ခုနချိန်ကြအစာစားတာလို့အိတ်တာလို့နေဆုံးပြီးဝဲတာလို့ဆိုတာဒါသူညီလို့ပဲရှိတာပဲဖြစ်တယ်မဟုတ်ဘူးအဲ့ဒါလို့ရှိတယ်လို့တချို့လူသားအမိခံနေတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်ကိုယ်တိုင်ကလည်းပဲသူတို့အလုပ်လုပ်မယ်အစာရမယ်စားမယ်ကြောမယ်အိတ်မယ်ကာမဂုဏ်နဲ့နေမယ်ဒါပဲအဲ့ဒါလည်းပဲသူအချိန်ကုန်ကြတယ်လို့ရှိပါလို့ရှိတယ်အဲ့ဒါကြီးစဉ်းစားကြည့်လိုက်လို့ရှိရင်ဘယ်လိုလဲဆိုတော့အဲ့ဒီအချိန်ကြီးအောက်တက်ကြတဲ့အချိန်ကြီးမရောက်ဖို့အတွက်အဲ့လိုအရေးကြီးပါလေဒါတော့အချိန်ကြီးတရားလမ်းကြောင်းမှာလိုက်ပြီးတော့ကိုယ့်ဘဝကိုမြင့်တင်ပေးဖို့ရတဲ့အရေးကြီးတယ်
Sada says the Buddha had mentioned the nature of those animal beings. They have 3 natures. They understand to do 3 things. They know to perform those 3 things. They know eating, they know sleeping, and they know sex. They are involved all the time with these 3 things. Sada says sometimes there might be some pets who might have some understanding about their masters and they wag their tails, but that is not sufficient understanding. And there are another pets, horses also, and they also know some signs of the masters, but it is also not enough to have wholesome activities in their life. As they know these 3 things, in the same way, if the human beings also only try to know those 3 things, then what is the difference? Yes, there are people, they only know how to take tasteful food and how to enjoy their worldly life, and when they're tired, how to get sleep. They understand these things. So if they only indulge in such 3 things, then their human life is really sorrowful life. They are wasting their valuable life, and such dangerous life shouldn't be there in the human society. And that type of life is not high standard life. That type of life is really lower standard life, very near to the animal life.
ကုသကအကုသကလည်းမယုံကြည်သူတို့ရဲ့အကျိုးပေးရာအကျိုးပေးဖို့လည်းမသိနားမလဲတဘဝလူဖြစ်ရတာပဲဆိုပြီးတော့စိတ်လိုရလွှတ်ထားပြီးဒီလိုပဲအကုသိုလ်ပြုစိတ်တွေပွားပြီးတော့ကုသိုလ်ပြုခွင့်ဆိုတာမရဆိုင်ကြဘူးဒါနဲ့ရှိဘဝကုသိုလ်ကံကောင်းလို့လူရဲလို့လာဖြစ်တာတရှိတဲ့လူဘဝကိုမြင်ဉဏ်ပြုပြီးတော့ဉာဏ်ပြုပြီးတော့ချမ်းသာပြီးဖြစ်ဖြစ်ဆင်းရဲပြီးဖြစ်စီတော့တယ်ဗျာဉာဏ်ပြုပြီးတော့အစစ်တက်ရမယ်အစားပါအဲ့ဒီတက်နိုင်တဲ့အဆင့်ကိုဖြုတ်ချပြီးတော့အောက်တန်းကြအောင်ပေါ့လူဘဝပုံပြပန်းပြဖြစ်အောင်ပေါ့လုပ်ကြတဲ့ပုဂ္ဂိုလ်တွေလည်းကာမဘောမှာမနေရဘူးဆိုတာကိုအဲ့ဒါဒီလည်းတွေးစားကြရတာပေါ့အဲ့ဒီလိုအစဉ်တန်းနေတော့လည်းခေါင်းလေးကိုရောက်ဖို့အတွက်ရောက်ဖို့အတွက်ပေါ့လူလူအခြေအနေဒီကာမဘောတရားလေးဒီကကျင်းလာလို့ဒီအဆုပ်ကိုပြောပါတယ်လူပြီးတာအောင်လို့ပြောပါတယ်
Sayadaw says there are many human beings who are thinking that this is the ending of their life, and they don't know what is the wholesome act and what is the unwholesome act. Not knowing clearly and precisely the wholesome act and unwholesome act, they never try to do and accumulate any kind of wholesome deeds. They just try to enjoy their life because they are now living beings, so they must enjoy whatever they can get in their existence until they survive in this world. After that, nothing could happen. So having that kind of very dangerous wrong thought, so they only indulge in unwholesome activities. Because of the accumulated previous wholesome karmas, they are here as the human beings. Instead of building gradual scaffolding to go higher and higher, they are removing the uplifting scaffolding and getting below and below. If they really don't perform any kind of wholesome activities, and if they don't try to understand the value of human life, they are really being a human. According to their nature, they are inhuman. They are devaluing themselves. Those people are actually pitiable people. They never reach to the standard living, and that type of life is actually blamable life. Sayadaw says, therefore, understanding the value of human life, knowing the benefit of the human life, it is necessary to build a scaffolding stage by stage to go up and up. That type of act is necessary in this world to have better life. Knowing these facts, if the human beings try to uplift their life through following proper ways, right paths, and try to keep that right path not to miss, then only the value of human life could be kept in safety. So therefore, those people who know that value, they could uplift their life and they can have better living here as well as hereafter. That is the most important thing which should be done by the human beings.
အခုလိုအရှင်ကြီးတဲ့လူဘဝကိုခိုင်ခံ့နဲ့ညှမ်းပြပြီးတော့အောက်တမ်းမကြအောင်လို့ထက်တန်းကြညှစ်တင်ပေးရမယ်လို့သဘောပေါက်နားလည်ထားတဲ့အတိုင်းရှင်ကြီးတဲ့တိဋ္ဌာန်ဘာဝနာတရားတွေကြည့်ဝလုံလောက်တဲ့ဒီအားထုတ်လို့အနည်းဆုံးတစ်ပတ်ကိုရရှိသွားတယ်အပယ်နဲ့ဆက်တဲ့ကိလေသာတွေပေါ့မပယ်ဘူးရဲ့ကိလေသာပုတ်ခွဲပယ်ခွင့်ဒီစမယ်ကောလောဘခန္ဓာဒီမှာအနိဗ္ဗိဇနာနိဗ္ဗိဇနာကရောတိသာဒီလိုတတ္တပတိနဲ့မဖြစ်ဘူးဆိုလို့ရှိရင်ဒီဒီဝိကိစိတ်ကိစ္စတွင်ရလူကြီးလည်းပဲပြည့်စည်အဲဒီအခဲနဲ့တုံးနေပြနေတယ်လောဘဒေါသအစရှိတဲ့အဆိုင်ခဲတွေလည်းဒါပြည့်ဖြစ်စီနေတယ်တတ္တပတိပဲဖြစ်လိုက်တာနဲ့ပဲခုနကိစ္စအဆိုင်ခဲတွေပေါ့ဒီဒါလည်းဖြစ်စီလိုက်တာပဲဒါလူကြီးအကျိုးပေါ့ဒီကျိုးကြီးကြပါလို့အတူတူနဲ့ပြည်တယ်ပောက်ကွဲပဲပြင်ပြီးတဲ့တတ္တပတိနဲ့ဒီအကျိုးအာနိသင်တွေပေါ့ကျမ်းဂန်တွေပါပြတယ်အဲ့တော့အားရစရာကောင်းတယ်ဒါအစစ်တက်တာ
The Sayadaw says, having such understanding and trying to develop the wholesome activities and trying to follow the true path to destroy the power of enemies totally, not to arise again, as the meditators here practicing the Satipatthana insight meditation. Through the Satipatthana insight meditation, so you could have the power to destroy the great mass of greed, hatred, delusion and so on, and especially when you reach to the first path knowledge, you could totally destroy the big heap of wrong thought and great mass of doubt. When you are free from such dangerous defilements, then really you are building the scaffolding to reach up and up, and you never fall down from that scaffolding. That type of scaffolding is necessary to build up. And Sayadaw thinks the yogis who are practicing here, they are ready to build their scaffolding higher and higher up, rather than removing one after another to get down. And when we are really those meditators who are practicing diligently their Satipatthana insight practice, they can develop their understanding and remove totally, reaching to the first part and past part knowledge as the stream winning, and they never fall down again to the suffering world, which are really dangerous one.
ဒုတိယအကျိုးအာနိသင်ကတော့အနမတေကသံစာရဝတ္တဒုက္ခသမုဒ္ဒံဆောစီစီဒီလိုတတ္တပတိနဲ့မရသေးရင်လူဘဝနတ်ဘဝပေါ့လေတန်တရားမှာကြာဦးမှာပေါ့ဘယ်လောက်ထိကြာမလဲဆိုတာအကန့်အသတ်မရှိဘူးရည်ရင်ကျေသုံးတရားကြီးကိုပေါ့လေခုနေရတယ်လို့ပဲမုဒ္ဒရာနဲ့ဒီရုပ်တဏ္ဍာတ်ဒီဆက်ဆက်ပြီးဖြစ်တဲ့ဟာကျေပြတ်တဲ့သမုဒ္ဒရာကြီးနဲ့နှိုင်းယှဉ်ပြတ်ထားတာအဲဒီလိုအဆုံးမထင်တဲ့တန်တရာသမုဒ္ဒရာကြီးကိုလည်းပဲသူက6ခန်းစီပါတယ်လို့ဆိုပါတယ်ဆိုလိုတာကတော့လူဘဝနတ်ဘဝမှာဆိုရင်ဆိုင်နေနေတဲ့အနေနဲ့ခုနဘဝနဲ့တူပြီးတော့ တန်တရားဆင်းရဲပြီးခံရတော့ဘူးလို့ဒီလိုဆိုတယ်အဆုံးမချင်းဝိရင်ကင်းစင်6စီတဲ့တို့ပြန်အဲ့ဒါကိုကြည့်ပြထားပါမယ်
As the first benefit of the first part and fruition knowledge, you totally eradicate those dangerous defilements, and you are free from such dangers, and you are free from those enemies who can give lot of troubles to you. And again, as the second benefit or advantage of the first part knowledge, you can narrow the vast ocean of this physical and mental process of universe. If you couldn't reach to the first part knowledge, until then you couldn't have any limitation of your existence one after another. You cannot limit the process of physical and mental process, which are vast enough to compare with the ocean. If you try to cross over the ocean just by swimming, how difficult it could be. In the same way, if you don't have the first part knowledge to reach to the other shore of the world, then you couldn't reach to the end of the other shore of the world. But when you reach to the first part knowledge, then the first part knowledge has got the power to limit the unlimited physical and mental process of world. That means, Sayadaw says, after reaching to the first part knowledge, you never get rebirth more than 7 rebirths. So there are real limitation of your birth. And during that moment, you never go to the lower world. That is the second benefit through which you can have boundary such as that such limitation we have got in this world. So in that way you can limit your world with obtaining the first part knowledge. How difficult it was. Yeah. Certainly.
နောက်တတိယအကျိုးအမြတ်ကတော့သဗ္ဗအပါယဒွါရာနိပိတဟတိဆိုထားပါတယ်သတ္တပတိမေကစောစောကပြောခဲ့တဲ့ကုသိုလ်တွေပြုခွင့်မရတာပေါ့အကုသိုလ်တွေရွေးဖြစ်ရာဌာနပေါ့ချမ်းသာ၃မျိုးရှိချင်းအကြောင်းပေါ့ကုသိုလ်တွေကင်းပြီးတော့အကုသိုလ်တွေများရာဘုံဘဝအားလုံးပေါ့ပဲအားလုံးတကားပြိလိုက်တယ်တကားပြိလိုက်တယ်တကယ်တကားပြိတာတော့မဟုတ်ပါဘူးဒီပေလားကြောင့်ကံဒီအကျိုးမပေးတာကဒါပြောတာပါရှိကပေလားကြောင့်ကံဒီပြုလိုက်လို့ရှိရင်အဲဒီကံရဲ့အကျိုးပေးတော့ယခုဘဝပြုထားတဲ့ပေလားကြောင့်ကံတွေရဲ့အကျိုးပေးတော့ပြီးတော့ပေလားကြောင့်ကံတိတိပေါ့အကုသိုလ်ကံတိတိကိုထပ်ပြီးတော့မပြုတော့အဲ့ဒါကိုပေလားပြိတယ်ပေလားလို့ပြောတယ်
As the third advantage of the first part knowledge is when you reach to the first part knowledge, you are enabled to close the door of the lower world. Totally you can close the door. That means even though you might have strong unwholesome accumulated previous karmas, and the accumulated karmas in this life, if you reach to the first part knowledge, all those karma forces through which you can get into the lower world, all those karma forces could be cut off because of the power of first part knowledge. So in that way, you never have opened lower world door in your life anymore after reaching to the first part knowledge. That is the third benefit or third advantage you will gain through the realization of the first part knowledge.
Sattadana, Siladana, Hiridana, Uttavadana, Suddhadana, Jagadana, Penyadana. Era di Ussa Amine Tinzavio, Funyu Piatava. Sulagaro, Yadiadana, Nadua, Yinjin, Kayeva, Pura Shabuda, the Sicily, and also in Pinham. Either the Abuaki, and Jenny, and Pilotilla, Navadilla, Navadilla, Usa, Bella, Macau, you are you move so the hill. Either Chuck the Otava, either Sita the Nazaragu, Potavati Maya, Chau, Agama Sita, Kini, Kini, Matan Kina, Sisi, Jamuga, Sagwa, and Sinai, and also. Adigama, Adigama Sutta, Alepanamia. The Jagadana Sara, Potavati Mene, Tandia Shalu Bala, the Kilita, the Suncha, Kasari, Machida, Unquaja, the Sonnet. Elu Sunning at Potava Boku, Nida Yimasu. You are Yoda, who you carry. Pinya dana selaga ada dekane buat pinya le, buat pinya pisang le kerja le pinya pinya tak usah ni, jadi kuban kita ini. Sejak tahun ini ada pinya kuban usah tu, paling buat itu semua.
The fourth advantage of reaching to the first part knowledge is you will actually possess 7 types of wealth, not ordinary wealth, the wealth of noble persons. Those yogis who obtain that first part knowledge, they obtain those 7 types of undestructible wealth. It is not like hoarding money. And you can see also. There are 7 types of noble person's wealth. First one is Saddha, Sayadaw says, confidence or devotion. Or even you might say faith. Faith in not in all sorts of things. Faith in the Dhamma, faith in the teacher, that means the Buddha, and faith in the noble disciples of the Buddha. In these 3 types of triple gems, his or her confidence never shake. It will become very stable, firm and standing still. And that is compared with the wealth. Because when you could have confidence in true things, you never lose wholesome activities to perform depending on those true things. So depending on triple gems, you can earn various wholesome activities, wholesome acts. And when you perform wholesome acts depending on the triple gems, you are really holding the possessions in your life. And not only that person will possess the wealth of confidence, he will even possess the wealth of moral conduct. As Sayadaw has already stated, the person who obtained the first part knowledge, he never breaks the 5 precepts. That is the second earning wealth. When you possess that wealth, at that time also, you can imagine what kind of wealth you will earn in your life. So the second wealth is the wholesome deed, wholesome physical and verbal deeds. He never loses that physical and wholesome deeds in his or her life. And the person who obtained the first part knowledge, he or she would possess moral shame. Whenever he or she has to do something wrong, he or she will feel ashamed. Oh, it is not my job, I shouldn't do this, it is wrong thing to do. That kind of shameful thought will arise if he or she tries to do some unwholesome deeds. That means he or she all the time tries to keep aside unwholesome deeds. Whenever there will be unwholesome deeds, he or she is ashamed to do those unwholesome deeds. That is why it is called wealth. You possess that moral shame wealth. And there is the fourth wealth, through which you will possess moral dread. You get afraid of doing any kind of unwholesome deeds, unwholesome impure acts. That is also another wealth. If you possess those qualities in your life and you never do any unwholesome deeds, so all sorts of civilized way of life would be there, cultured way of life would be there in your life, and you are not degrading, you are upgrading. And your standard is not lowering down, your standard is heightening. And later on, the fifth wealth, you will obtain good general knowledge. That means not all sorts of general knowledges. The general knowledge of the true practices, how to perform wholesome deeds, physically, verbally and mentally, and how to improve your mind towards the developed stage. That kind of general knowledge is meant here. So that means you know the right way to do the wholesome practice, to uplift your spiritual life. And you know how to practice in true sense even the Satipatthana inside practice. It is also needed. General knowledge, how you need to. You should observe all those arising objects without missing them moment after moment. If you don't know how to do that, then you cannot do any progress in your practice. So that is why that type of general knowledge is necessary to have. And that is also counted as one of the wealths. That is the fifth wealth of noble persons. And another wealth is when you know not to do any kind of unwholesome things. That means you have understanding not to give any way to arise any kind of unwholesome thoughts in you. And unwholesome thoughts means greed, hatred, envy, jealousy, pride, conceit. All these things are unwholesome thoughts. And because of those thoughts, you are prevented from doing wholesome deeds. But when you know these things are unwholesome, so we should try to keep them away. And when you keep them away, instead of those unwholesome thoughts, you will have wholesome thoughts. Instead of greed, what will come there? You will become generous. So one way you discard unwholesome things, another way you develop the wholesome things. So when you become generous, you will have open mind, not the mind through which you could be a miserly one. So the sixth wealth is having open heart, being generous. You never afraid of giving if you obtain the first part knowledge, and you know how to perform the generous act to make fruitful. So therefore the sixth wealth is in Pali chaga. Chaga means giving. What you give, at first you give the unwholesome things away from your mind, and whatever you possess as the worldly possessions, you are there to share with other people, to give them happiness, pleasure, to see benefit of others, to help others. That kind of giving will be there. And that could be physical giving, verbal giving, mental giving. Lot of giving would be there in your mind when you possess the wealth of giving, or charitable thought. And last one is the wisdom itself, proper understanding about the wholesome things. That is also counted as the wealth. That is the most important wealth which you possess in your life. When you have that wealth, then you are rich enough to be called a billionaire. And these are the 7 noble persons' wealth, and the person and the yogis who obtain the first part knowledge, they possess all these 7 types of wealth. The Sayadaw says, if people possess such 7 types of noble persons' wealth, whether they are men or whether they are women, there aren't any difference. They will get equal advantages if they possess. So equality is there, no differentiation. And they could be called rich people the Buddha himself mentioned, are Dalita. Although they might be poor in worldly position, but they are rich enough to call, that is why I call them before, they are billionaires. You could be millionaire and billionaire spiritually. So in that way, you would have equal share in their life without having any disbalance. And not only that, since you possess all those noble persons, 7 qualities, 7 wealth, so therefore your life is really precious one, really fruitful one, not useless one. It is useful one.
Yeah, never the who can show you the me you got your daddy that done to kissing the air, you know, you gender body, done like you, choose that. Mamma, not easy, I would do the poor keeper. The good your daddy done queen yahan. The teaching in Lands body. There are new ladies who are never the out of a new piece of in your year, yes, quite argument. You get some of your journey done, a journey down long ways with some image which you don't know, Jew youngness of here.
Sada says nowadays there are strong, how to say, desire arising in another group. That means there are women who want to have equal standard in the human society. They want to have equality between man and woman, and they want to degrade themselves, and they don't want to think they are lower than men, so they are trying to have revolution for that. Although the revolution is to be beneficial to have, but the ordinary revolution which they are tending to increase in their life, overpowered by pride and prejudices, so they are unwholesome things. If the women also really want their equalizing standard in their life, if they follow to possess these 7 types of wealth, and even they can go forward rather than the men folk in such cases, then it would be really a praiseworthy act, where there is no pride and prejudices and no any unwholesome thoughts could be involved in their revolution. At that type, Sayadaw says, it would be better to have such revolution in their life if they want really equalizing standard with the men folk. Sayadaw thinks that is the best way to compete in their life. Most of the time Sayadaw thinks about that matter. Oh, these people want equal share, but they are trying to revolt in unwholesome ways. If they try to revolt in this way, how it would be better.
Buddha Nyasa Korenga dice power Yudhimiya the Mama Pui Mison Yumene Yudhamia and Dandy Gaines. Targa Tautari, Yaya Tawai. I want to show you Pukuya, yes or here, you never got like you to do, cut me, low to do, what do you do? Chingy baby, the pages, we are
Sayadaw says there are so many aspects expounded by the Buddha to have equal share between men and women, but there are some people, they tend to think that the Buddha takes side towards the men, and he was trying to look down towards the women folks. It is not real. If you try to understand the teaching of the Buddha, women folk never lose their right to get equal share with the men in the dispensation of the Buddha. If they tend to think that the Buddha was looking down to them, then it might be their wrong thought. And it should be thought in that way. So Sayadaw would like to make hope that the women group who wants to have equality with the men try to follow the unblameable way where there couldn't be any defect in their activities, and try to reach to the same standard state through their proper effort without losing the wholesome state of their life.
Now, Eva Maria Mena Punya Nemo Beauty Doreka Sodapati Mega Misa Shipa Shipa Shi Misa Shima Lucia Shine to it, Potabakuha Lama Malaito Lama the South Lama Shoulders Lama Yota Ianes Yota Manuel Manuel
Sayadaw says, although he has intention to try to convince about that matter with various examples, but he hasn't got sufficient time to do so. Now he says he would go forward to describe the fifth advantage of the first part, knowledge, understanding. When people obtain the first part, knowledge, then they are free from wrong eightfold paths. They give up the wrong eightfold paths totally. It is right to obtain the first part, knowledge. If you don't follow the right path, you never obtain that first part, knowledge. Through the right path, you could obtain the first part, knowledge. Therefore, when you follow the right path, right Eight Noble Path, then there couldn't arise any kind of wrong eightfold path. And you could be totally away from those wrong eightfold path when you really reach to the first path knowledge. That is the fifth advantage you obtain through reaching to the first path knowledge.
ချက်ခုမြတ်အကျိုးအာနိသင်ကတော့သဗ္ဗဝေရဗျာနိဥပသမိတိသောတပတ္တိမေကယံပေါင်းပရိပေါင်းနဲ့ယံမျိုးစုံဘေးမျိုးစုံပေါ့အဲ့ဒါတွေကိုမြင်ဖို့စီပါလေယံဆိုတာဟိုတော့ပြောခဲ့ပါပြီအတွင်းယံအတွင်းယံဆိုတာဒီကံကြီးကျွလွန်လို့ရှိရင်မတရားတဲ့ကိုယ်တို့အပြုအမူတွေကျွလွန်တဲ့အခါမှာဒီနည်းရဲ့တဏ္ဍာမှာလောဘဒေါသမောဟတွေအလုံးတောင်းကျမ်းအလုံးဆိုးတယ်အဲ့ဒါပြုမှုတွေလို့ရှိရင်မိမိကိုယ်တိုင်ပဲယံသူပဲလို့ကျန်ကန်တယ်ပြတ်ထားပါတယ်ဒီလောဘဒေါသမောဟအယံကြီးအယံကြီးလည်းအေးသွားတယ်ယံအေးလို့ရှိရင်ကျောက်ပြရပြီးလည်းခါတယ်မတရားအောင်မခရအောင်လည်းဒီကပြုလုပ်ပြီးဒီချမ်းသာဒီပြုလို့ဒီလိုတဲ့ပုံပုံများတော့ဘာလို့လဲလုံးကောင်းတယ်ဒီပြေပြီးပေါ့ကြောက်တယ်ဆိုပြီးအာဒီပြန်လာတော့ပါတယ်တတိရှိရှိကိုပြောတာဘာလို့လဲဆိုတော့အဒီကောင်းမှုရအတွက်အဒီကောင်းအရေးချင်းကျွေးလို့ဖြစ်တာ
So Sayadaw says, as the sixth advantage of the first part, knowledge, understanding, when you reach to that knowledge, you would be free from all sorts of enemies and all sorts of dangers.